Gone Girl. Was the book or movie better? Let's dive in and decide. Let's start with the differences between some of the characters from the page to the screen. First, let's talk about our protagonist, Amy Dunne, played by Rosamund Pike in an Oscar-nominated performance. In the book, she is described as being beautiful, tall, and a slender woman from a wealthy New York family, although her exact appearance is secondary to her cool girl persona. She is wickedly intelligent, glamorous, and soft-spoken, and looks older than Nick. In the movie, Pike matches her book character's description almost perfectly, although she isn't as tall as her co-star, which makes Amy look shorter in comparison. She also appears younger than he is. Next up, we have Nick Dunne, portrayed by Ben Affleck. In the book, he is described as being handsome, charismatic, and embodying the all-American guy image with blonde hair. He has a more complex and often morally questionable nature beneath it all. In the movie, Affleck brings to life the all-American guy personality perfectly, although he does appear a little bit more shaggy as the plot progresses. He maintains the same physically attractive, charismatic description as his book counterpart. However, he is not blonde. Instead, he retains Affleck's natural dark hair. We also have to talk about Desi Collings, played by Neil Patrick Harris. In the book, he is described as being prim and proper, embodying the persona of a sophisticated high society man who appreciates the finer things in life. In the movie, however, Neil Patrick Harris's physical attributes like his face and his voice are very similar to his well-known character, Barney Stinson, in the TV show How I Met Your Mother. This familiar, almost goofy public image contrasts sharply with Desi's true, sinister, obsessive nature as written in the book. Of course, no mystery story is complete without a detective investigating. In this case, it's Detective Rhonda Bailey, portrayed by Kim Dickens. In the book, she has a less significant role, often depicted as inadequate with her investigative skills. Her character develops a deep, fascinating obsession with solving this case, which is the only compelling part of her arc. In the movie, Dickens brings her to life with a more realistic, cold edge, elevating the character from a minor character to a significant one, even if she doesn't have much on-screen time. She appears more competent in the movie than in the book, and prettier than how Nick describes her, which in the book was ugly. Now, let's talk about the biggest story changes between the book and the movie adaptation. A major difference between the two is in the proposal. In the movie, Nick proposes to Amy while at a book party for her parents' latest Amazing Amy book. It's a charming scene, but not at all in the book. Though Diary Amy writes a good deal about her and Nick's early relationship, she never actually once mentions how Nick proposed to her. And speaking of the diary entries, the movie does skip Amy's stories of taking care of Nick's dying mother and the entries of Nick skipping their anniversary to go to a strip club with a laid-off coworker and her suspicions of him cheating. Another major change in the movie is the number of clues. In the movie, Nick searches for Amy's anniversary clues, and it takes him to 3 places: his workplace, his father's home, and the shed behind his sister Margot's house. One location featured in the novel, a trip to Hannibal, Missouri, where Nick had once gone with both Amy and his affair partner Andy, was left out. The movie also omits the affectionate notes that Amy leaves in the book, which are designed to rekindle Nick's feelings for her. These notes include admiring remarks such as calling him witty, helping him to momentarily feel the pull back into the charm of their relationship. There were also some character changes with respect to the plot, like with Nick's father. In the book, Nick's father plays a large role, with Nick reflecting on his dad's misogyny and his own fears of inheriting that mindset. The novel also reveals Nick's harsh inner thoughts towards women, something the film leaves out. At one point, readers might even suspect that his father had an involvement in Amy's disappearance, since he escapes his care facility on the same day. It's later revealed that Amy actually visited him to subtly shift suspicion onto Nick. In the movie, however, this major subplot is minimized, and Nick's father only appears briefly at the police station. And on the subject of parents, Amy's parents have a much smaller role in the movie than in the book. In the book, Nick sees Amy's parents as crucial to shaping public opinion in his favor. Amy, meanwhile, reflects deeply on her childhood in her diary entries, revealing that her mother suffered multiple miscarriages before she was born, and each baby that they lost was named Hope. These idolized hopes, whose birthdays are still commemorated, casts a lifelong shadow over Amy, making her feel that she can never live up to the perfection of the unborn. The movie leaves out this backstory entirely, reducing Amy's parents to minor background roles. Since this is a movie with some gruesome scenes, I do want to talk about how different Desi's death is between the movie and the book. In the book, Amy drugs Desi before cutting his throat and murdering him. Gruesome, right? Well, Fincher takes things a step further in the movie. Mid-lovemaking, Amy cuts his throat with blood spilling all over her, her white bra, and the white bed, which is much more gruesome, right? Also, the fake story about how Amy was abused by her father when she was younger to win Desi's trust never happens in the movie. Some minor plot changes don't necessarily affect the overall plot, but I do want to mention them. Like when Andy attacks Nick by biting him in the book after he breaks up with her, after his lawyer, Tanner Bolt, tells him to. This is completely removed from the movie. There's also the interview that Nick does with a young reporter named Rebecca. She gets him to say that he loves Amy still, which helps him win some public favor in his case, but the scene is entirely cut from the movie and is only in the book. And one last major change is the famous cool girl speech, which was partially rewritten for the movie. Now, let's talk about what the movie got right and what it got wrong. One of the main strengths of the adaptation is David Fincher's masterful and stylish direction. By having the original author, Gillian Flynn, adapt her own novel, Fincher and Flynn successfully translate the novel's dark tone and intricate plot into a visually compelling and suspenseful cinematic experience. The film's pacing maintains the tension throughout its 2.5-hour runtime. The decision to keep the novel's nonlinear story structure, which jumps between the present-day investigation and the flashbacks via Amy's diary entries, is smooth and well handled by Fincher. The decision to hire Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross to create a haunting and atmospheric score matches the aesthetic of the visual, building tension and influencing the audience's emotional state, just like the book did. Another strength of the movie is the powerful and memorable performances by its leads. The casting and performances of Pike and Affleck brought a compelling richness to an already complex set of characters that Flynn originally wrote in her novel. They perfectly capture the disturbing dynamic of the Dunne marriage. I mean, Pike got nominated for an Oscar thanks to this performance and her chilling and brilliant and terrifying take on Amy Dunne. She fully embodies Amy's multifaceted nature, effectively navigating the character's shifts from victim to, spoiler alert, antagonist. Meanwhile, Affleck holds his own, portraying a man who is charismatic and perfectly balanced with his flawed and apathetic nature. Without two committed stars, the movie's themes and overall tone would have simply fallen apart. However, as much as the movie had its strengths, it did have a few weaknesses too. One major weakness of the adaptation is that it underexplores Nick's character and highlights more of Amy's. Don't get me wrong, Amy is one of the most complex and badass characters, but her story and character are directly intertwined with Nick's. In the novel, Flynn uses Nick's inner monologue to establish his twisted and codependent nature, creating a more complex and morally ambiguous character. The film, however, relies on Affleck's physical performance, stripping away much of his inner turmoil. This results in a weaker emotional impact of an ending for some. In a movie, Nick is seen as a helpless victim of his wife's design and less of a subtle evilness that Book Nick has, which makes the movie's audience more sympathetic towards him, unbalancing the story's themes of mutual toxicity. Which then brings me to another weakness of the adaptation: the ending, which is less satisfying on screen than in the novel. While the ending is largely the same between both, some find the movie's conclusion unsatisfying and unbelievable due to the simplified emotional beats. The book's ending includes a powerful, unsettling final line delivered by Nick, while the film announces Amy's pregnancy on live television. This change was a point of contention for some, since they felt the public spectacle undermined the more intimate and psychological horror of the novel's final scenes. So, which one wins, the book or the movie? For me, the movie does win. David Fincher was the perfect choice in adapting Gillian Flynn's novel and bringing it to life, perfectly capturing the dark tones, plot twists, and character study that the author brought to her own adapted screenplay. But what do you think? Did the adaptation do the book justice, or do you prefer the original? Let me know down in the comments as always. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell, and I'll see you next time right here on Collider.